Welcome back to Northern Tales, where stories of love, loss, and sacrifice from northern Nigeria come alive. We continue our story when kindness runs dry. In part 2, we saw how Halima and her children's life took a turn for the better. They now have their own house, and Aliyu is a university student. Let's continue. Senator Sarki's death came as a shock that rippled through the entire city. In mosques and markets, people shook their heads in disbelief. The man whose laughter once echoed at weddings, whose babbar riga was a common sight at political gatherings, now lay silent beneath the earth. When the news reached Halima's modest sitting room, she and Aliyu sat in stunned silence. The radio hummed in the background, the announcer's solemn voice repeating the same words. The passing of Senator Sarki has left a void in our state and beyond. Aliyu looked at his mother, his brows furrowed. Mama, is it true? Is he really gone? Halima nodded slowly, her eyes heavy. Yes, my son. Allah gives life and Allah takes it. Today it is him. Tomorrow it could be any of us. For a long moment, they said nothing. Then Halima sighed, her voice softer. Despite everything, Senator Sarki was a man of generosity. Do you know how many poor families he fed during Ramadan? How many weddings he sponsored quietly without fanfare? He had his flaws, but many people will weep for him today. His presence filled every gathering. His absence will leave a hole. Aliyu shifted uncomfortably. Memories of Bilkisu's sharp words and the humiliation he once endured at her house burned in his chest. He hesitated, then asked, Mama, will you go for the 3 days mourning? You know how things are between you and Auntie Bilkisu. Halima's gaze dropped to her hands, resting on her lap. He took a deep breath before answering. My son, whatever passed between us is for Allah to judge. Sarki showed kindness to many, even to us. I must pay my respects. It is our tradition, and it is right before Allah. I will go tonight at least to sit with the family for the first night. After that, I will see. If it is unbearable, I will quietly return home, but I cannot stay away completely. Ali studied her face. He saw the quiet strength there, the resolve to do what was right, even when pride or pain might have held another back. He nodded, though uneasily. You are right, Mama. It is only proper. May Allah grant him Jannah. Amin, Halima whispered, her voice carrying both respect for the dead and the weariness of a woman who had seen too much of life's bitterness. That evening, as the city's loudspeakers echoed Quran recitations and long lines of cars streamed towards the senator's mansion, Halima took her hijab and prepared to step out once more into Bilkisu's world, not as a guest of wealth, but as a witness to loss. Bilkisu was stunned after her husband's death. Her husband had been ill before, yes? The chest pains came and went, always soothed with medicine. He had been careful, never missing his tablets, always checking in with the doctors. Each time she thought the worst had passed, that she would still see him at the head of the dining table, dressed in his crisp white kaftan. Now he was gone. She sat in silence in her richly furnished section of the house, her mother, Fadima, by her side. A few of Fadima's old friends and some neighbors gathered, their low murmurs filling the air like a dull hum. Bilkisu's mind wandered, but one thought stabbed her heart more than the rest. Halima. Where was she? Most of her siblings had come already, filing through with somber faces, but Halima had not. The news had spread since dawn, and now it was almost 4 p.m. The death had occurred in the night, yet Halima was nowhere to be seen. The bitterness tightened in Bilkisu's chest. Still, the condolences kept coming. Men and women streamed in steadily, offering Quranic recitation, clasping their hands, murmuring Allah ya ji kanshi. Even the governor of the state came, his convoy stirring dust at the gate. He sat briefly with the family, offered his words of respect, and left with solemn dignity. As Maghrib approached, the crowd began to thin. The once busy compound softened into evening shadow. It was then that Halima finally entered. Assalamu alaikum, she said, her voice steady. Their mother and the women around her answered warmly, grateful for her presence. But Bilkisu only raised her head, let her eyes rest on Halima for the briefest moment, then turned away, her lips pressed tight. Halima did not falter. She crossed the room quietly and sat in front of their mother, gently taking her hand. Mama, Allah ya ji ƙanshi, Allah ya ba mu haƙuri, she said softly. Their mother squeezed her hand, her eyes glistening. Then Halima turned to Bilkisu. She greeted her in the traditional way reserved for the bereaved, her tone respectful and measured. Bilkisu forced out monosyllables, her voice strained, her body stiff. After the greeting, Halima rose. She adjusted her veil and said simply, I will go and greet the other wives. Without waiting for an answer, she left the room and moved toward the section where the senator's other wives were gathered, her steps unhurried, her dignity intact. Despite the weight of death in the air, Bilkisu could not restrain herself. From the moment Halima stepped into the household, she found fault in everything. Halima, as was her way, did not sit idly. She moved around quietly, serving food to visitors, collecting and rinsing plates, calming restless children, making sure no one lacked water. But to Bilkisu, even this was not enough effort. Two of Bilkisu's younger children began quarreling, their raised voices carrying across the morning room. Halima stepped forward, her tone firm but gentle. Stop fighting, she told them. Go and sit in a corner. Recite prayers for your father instead. This is not the time for quarrels. Before the children could move, Bilkisu exploded. Who are you to scold my children? She shouted, her voice sharp as a whip. Let them cry, let them scream. Their father is dead, you wicked, vindictive woman. After all my husband did for you, you still despise my children. The room rose. Gasps echoed. Even their mother, who was often silent in such moments, turned sharply. Haba Bilkisu, that is enough. Make damanki, she said sternly. But she did not stop there. An elderly mourner from the senator's side, a woman with deep lines carved by age and wisdom, rose to her feet. Her voice was heavy with restrained anger that had long been waiting. Bilkisu, she said, your contempt is known to us all. You think because your husband was rich, you could speak down to anyone. People endured your disrespect only because of Senator Sarki. Now that he is gone, you will see no one is forced to bear your tongue anymore. Bilkisu's face flushed, her lips trembling with rage, but the room had turned against her. Halima, embarrassed by the uproar, lowered her head. She stood and reached for her bag. I am sorry, she said softly. I only came to pay my respect. I did not mean to cause trouble. She made to leave, but the elderly woman quickly snatched the bag from her hand. Clutching it to her chest, she declared, You're not going anywhere. Not because of her. This is my brother's house. You are welcome to stay here. Halima protested, reaching out for her bag, but the woman tightened the grip. Then, as if fate itself intervened, Halima's phone began to ring from inside the bag. With a sigh, the woman opened it, removed the phone, and handed it to Halima. Keeping the bag close, her eyes softened as she whispered, Please don't go, not on her account. Halima glanced at her tone, then pressed the phone to her ear. It was Aliyu. Mama, what's going on? I heard noise, he asked, his voice steady. Halima stepped outside into the courtyard to speak freely. She recounted the quarrel, her voice weary. Aliyu listened quietly, then spoke with calm firmness. Mama, you're only there because she's your sister. But if she doesn't want you there, why stay? You always told me there is no point forcing yourself into people's lives. If your presence brings dispute, then it is better to leave with dignity. Just come home. Take Keke, I'm here. I will pay him when you arrive. Halima closed her eyes, listening to her son's words. He was no longer the small boy whose tears once fell over a broken computer. Now he was the man, tall, thoughtful, his voice carried both patience and strength. A 300 level university student, disciplined, intelligent, and wise beyond his years. She smiled faintly. You are right, Aliyu. May Allah bless you. Moments later, she flagged down a passing keke napep. The evening wind tugged at her hijab as she climbed in. Behind her, the senator's mansion loomed heavy with silence, gold, and grief. Ahead of her, the narrow road stretched back towards her home, a simpler place, but one filled with peace. As was customary with large gatherings, not everyone came to mourn. Some came to eat, some came to observe, and some, especially women that are used to gossiping, came with ears wide open and tongues already itching. By the end of the 3-day mourning, Bilkisu's name was everywhere. Her story spread faster than Hamatan fire through dry grass. In markets, saloons, and compounds, women lowered their voices, widened their eyes, and added their own spices to the tale. Wallahi, did you hear what Bilkisu did to her own sister during her husband's mourning? One woman hissed as she bent over vegetables in the market. She humiliated her in front of everyone. Allah kiyaye. Another, tying her wrapper tighter, leaned closer. Humiliate? That one is small. My cousin was there. She said Bilkisu slapped her in the presence of mourners. Imagine, in a house filled with Quranic recitation, he raised her hand against her sister. A third shook her head vigorously, eager to top the story. Slap her back. You people haven't had the full gist. They said Bilkisu beat her like a child until elders pulled her away. Beat her? Who does that during mourning? In a salon between the hum of dryers and the gossip took a sharper edge. Don't you know why? One woman asked with raised brows. Senator was taking care of Halima secretly. That's why Bilkisu hated her so much. She was jealous, afraid the man would leave something for Halima and her children. Gasps followed, heads shaking, lips pursed. Whether true or false, the story found wings. By the second week, the versions were countless. Some swore Bilkisu had thrown Halima's bag out into the street. Others claimed she insulted Halima's son too, calling him an intruder in the mansion. One particularly wild tale insisted Bilkisu spat at her sister, causing her to leave empty-handed. Each retelling stretched the truth further, but the conclusion was the same everywhere. Bilkisu disgraced herself. And in the quiet of her mansion, Bilkisu could feel it. The phone calls that once rang endlessly grew fewer. Invitations dried up. Women who once clung at her side at weddings now avoided her gaze. Even in whispers behind her back, she could sense her name burning like hot pepper on their tongues. She had inherited wealth. She knew her husband was rich. She knew they would be taken care of. But her reputation, once polished, was crumbling under the weight of gossip. After the quarrel, Halima stayed away from the mansion. She had no desire to subject herself again to Bilkisu's venom. But the truth was Bilkisu's cruelty had never been reserved for Halima alone. Amongst the siblings, Halima had suffered the most, perhaps because the senator himself had once taken interest in her situation, offering support after her husband's death. That alone seemed to fuel Bilkisu's jealousy like kerosene to fire. But the others too had felt her scorn. There were countless small humiliations they had swallowed in silence. One of their sisters once came to visit Bilkisu. Bilkisu told her maid to say she was not at home, even as her loud laughter drifted from the living room. On another occasion, when their eldest brother appeared at the gate, Bilkisu instructed the security man to tell him she was resting and he should come back tomorrow. He had left quietly, the insult burning in his chest. The morning outburst, however, was different. This time it happened in the presence of outsiders and it opened everyone's eyes. Within days, the siblings called for a private family meeting. Their mother, Fadima, was present, but Bilkisu was deliberately excluded. They gathered in their eldest brother's house, voices heavy with years of pent-up pain. This thing has gone too far, one sister said. If she can disgrace Halima like that in front of strangers, what else is left? She has no respect for any of us, another added. Not for her elders, not even for Mama. She thinks because of her husband's wealth, she can trample everyone. Their elder brother, usually slow to anger, spoke firmly. We cannot continue this way, Mama. We respect you, but you must choose. If you remain in Bilkisu's house, then we will stop visiting you there. We will only call you on the phone. We cannot keep subjecting ourselves to that woman's contact. Fadima's face tightened with worry. Her heart was torn. Bilkisu was her daughter after all. Yet, as she looked around the room, she saw the unity in her other children's eyes. This was no petty grudge. It was a line drawn at last, after years of quiet endurance. The decision was made. The siblings would cut ties with Bilkisu. They would mourn their brother-in-law in their own way. But the days of tolerating her scorn had ended. And so while Bilkisu sat in her gilded mansion, clutching wealth like a shield, she did not yet realize that what she feared most was already happening. She was being left alone, even by her own blood. In the senator's mansion, the other wives mourned quietly. Their sections of the vast compound buzzed with visitors, family members, neighbors, political allies, old friends, people coming in steady streams to condole them, pray, or simply sit with them. The air was heavy with grief, but also with the comfort of people. Bilkisu's section, however, was different. It was eerily quiet. Visitors passed through but did not linger. Even her mother, Fadima, had stayed by her side through the early days, now kept mostly to herself, her lips moving over Quran verses or dhikr beats. The lively chatter of sympathizers that filled other corners of the mansion rarely reached Bilkisu's way. As the 4 months of mourning came to an end, her loneliness thickened. Her adult children had flown back to school, to their various universities abroad. The younger ones packed their bags for boarding school. Even her mother began to drift away, now choosing to spend more time in the homes of her other children, visiting Bilkisu for a few days at a time before quietly leaving again. Then came the day the senator's wealth was finally shared. The division was done under Islamic rites. Each wife and her children received their rightful share. What Bilkisu inherited along with her children was more than enough to guarantee that they will never need to worry about money again. Houses, land, and accounts, the kind of wealth that could sustain them for generations. Yet, in the quiet evenings beneath the glittering chandelier, Bilkisu began to feel a strange feeling of lack. It was not money, it was people. Her friends, who once crowded her parlor with perfume and gossip, no longer visited. Invitations to weddings and naming ceremonies stopped arriving. The cousins and siblings who once tolerated her sharp tongue stayed away. Even her own children, when at home, preferred the company of friends, locking themselves in their rooms or vanishing for outings. Still, Bilkisu could not admit the truth. She folded her arms across her chest and spoke aloud to herself, her words a shield against the loneliness. They are all jealous. That is why they stopped coming. Jealous of my life, jealous of my house, jealous of what Sarki left for me. She scowled at the silence of the once busy courtyard. And Mama, she left because she thinks the money is gone with Sarki. But let her go. They will all come back when they see me standing strong. They think they can desert me. Wallahi, I will deal with all of them. In her heart, she knew the truth, but in her mouth, she clothed it with excuses. And so she sat alone, convinced that her wealth was enough to fight back the hollow echo of abandonment. One evening, as the Hamatan breeze swept through the empty courtyard, Bilkisu stood at the window, clutching her prayer beads. The mansion felt too big, too hollow. Suddenly, a knock echoed at her door, a firm, deliberate knock, not the kind of knock that came from a neighbor or a servant. She frowned, her heart tightened. Who could it be at this hour? She was surprised that the security man did not inform her and allowed a visitor to come directly to her door. When she opened the door, she froze. The last face she expected to see was standing right there, staring at her. Her lips parted, but no words came out. And this is where we end today's chapter of Northern Tales. We have seen how power and pride can leave a person surrounded by wealth yet starved of people. But who is the visitor at Bilkisu's door? And what will their arrival mean to her crumbling world? Stay with us for the next episode of Northern Tales, where the story of family and pride continues. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story.